Hey everyone, Adrian here. Welcome to the Conversations with Adrian podcast. Today I'm joined by Adam Roa. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Adrian. I appreciate it. What's up, all you listeners out in the whatever verse you're in?
Yeah, the Australia verse. I just wanted to thank you for your time today, and also I wanted to acknowledge you for the who you are, who you've been looking for poem. That was how I initially discovered you, I guess. And it's
Mm.
something that I regularly post on my page, and it always resonates with everyone. It's just one of those timeless sort of topics, and everyone kind of the feedback that I get is, thank you for that message. It's almost like you can pinpoint every moment in someone's life at that particular time they need to hear those words. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for that. I think it's just one of my favorites, anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's amazing to me that years later, that poem still um, resonates so deeply with people. It's still, anytime it gets posted anywhere, people really seem to respond to it, and that warms my heart so much, and really speaks to the power of our creativity and art. And when we pour ourselves into something like that, it outlives us. It can do so
Mm.
much more than we can personally do. It's like spreading the message on our behalf out there into the world, which is really cool.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you should be very proud. I think it's something that, like I said, it touches everyone. Every time I hear it, it's the same. It's just kind of like, fuck, definitely needed to hear that today. And it's just almost like you know all the answers, but you need some reassurance. So anyway,
Yeah.
before we
Every
get
time I
started,
perform it, it's the same thing, at all my shows whenever I do that poem, I'm like, this is just as much for me. You can't hear it enough times. There's
yeah,
always something new in there and relevant to that day.
that's so cool. How long ago did you write that?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It went viral in 2018. So, and I'd written it probably a couple years before that. So I imagine I wrote it in probably around 2015.
Wow. And was that, would you say, the catalyst to your uh to people getting to know you? That was that the first video you think that kind of went viral of that nature?
It was definitely the first video that ever went viral to that degree. I mean, I don't know what viral means anymore. Like what is the actual number? Is a million viral? Is 10 million viral? Who knows? But I had never had a piece of content do what that piece did for sure. And it single-handedly blew up my social media following from what it was at the time to a lot, like 10x in a very short window of time. And then it's just continued to evolve and grow and shift. But that piece, every once in a while, finds its way kind of back into the collective. Some page somewhere shares it, or I perform it somewhere, and then it kind of has a resurgence.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
100%.
you single handedly, you're the one bringing it back.
I'm helping you, man. Whatever I can do.
Yeah.
So what interests me about you is the reason why I brought that up is because that was my introduction to you, and I could see when I see people like you or hear things, I kind of just automatically go into a bit of a research mode and kind of like scout around the socials and dig between beneath the surface and find out who this person is and what are they doing. And that definitely to me was like the explosiveness of coming out of that particular video or piece of content that sort of blew your name up in lights, really. But I'm interested to know what was the catalyst of all of your kind of discovery and work and the things that you were doing prior to that, because it's like, not that I'm comparing myself, but I mean, in when I started podcasting and doing a few things online, it kind of puts your name up in lights, for example, and people go, man, like I really like the videos that you do and the content and all that kind of stuff, but they don't realize that I've been doing this for a long time. I just was unheard of for many of those years, and now I'm kind of just starting to get a bit of traction. So I'm curious to know what it was your background kind of leading up to that moment where everything just started to blow up.
Well, I'm curious to know, when you say you've been doing it a long time, what is a long time? Like when did you first start putting videos out?
So for me, I started doing in a previous life, I owned a real estate agency, and so I started using digital media to promote myself as a real estate agent, and that was about 2011. So
Hmm.
it's in terms of video content that Facebook was kind of getting it somewhat of a attraction, I guess. People were just using it more for, just selfies and bits and pieces like that. It didn't really have that much of a business side of it. YouTube was definitely the thing. Instagram was not even in existence as far as I'm concerned. That was kind of like the beginning for me. And I think
Hmm.
back to 2011, 2012, to video market yourself was just unheard of. It just wasn't really, well, in particularly in my industry, wasn't something anyone was really doing at that
Got
time.
it. And then it became personal development at some point for you as well.
Yeah, so my story, it's all about me now. So my story was that it started off in real estate, then businesses were saying, how are you doing all of this stuff, the marketing and everything? And then I transitioned, kind of like had to add a second arm to my business, which was coaching and teaching people how to use digital media for their businesses. And then the more I started to get into that, I exited out of the business of real estate. I sold that, and once I started coaching clients about their business models and about marketing and about ad copy and all those sorts of things, what I quickly realized that and was that if I could only just, I was mostly helping them getting the mindset of getting out of their own way. So I was dealing with their relationship issues and staff issues, and just getting them motivated and getting out of the shit times that kind of bog you down, all those sorts of stuff. And so it just become more personal development than it did
Yeah.
marketing. And so the
What
the
year was that?
ooh 20 so into 2015, 16, 17, sort of getting into that
Got
realm.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, very cool. Good to know. If you can't tell, I have two podcasts, so I'm used to asking questions
I could
as
tell.
well. But I think that to your point, and where it's, I guess I can find the similarities is, so I had a personal training business. I was a private personal trainer for many years, and that was, I had this realization similar to you with real estate, which was my clients are actually coming to me for mindset coaching and life coaching more than anything. I had the same clients for my longest standing client was, I believe, almost 7 years, and we trained twice a day for almost 7 years. And I had several clients that were in that 3 to 5 year range, and I had seen them get married. I'd seen them get divorced. I saw them have children. I saw, like, I was the one of the longest standing relationships they had in their entire life, and especially one where they came and opened up vulnerably about what was going on in their lives. And so I remember this moment where my partner at the time, we were at a wedding, and I trained both the bride and the groom. And they had hired me because they were preparing for their wedding. They wanted to look good. And during their speech to everyone, they thanked me and said, we wouldn't be here without you. We're so happy and all this stuff. And my ex-girlfriend, she leaned in my ear and she goes, who thanks their personal trainer at their wedding? And it really opened my eyes to just it wasn't really about the personal training. The personal training was the context, but they were coming for the content, which was what was going on inside those sessions where we talked about their lives and they asked for advice, etc. And so I started to no longer want to trade my physical presence for money any longer. I wanted to be able to work remotely from anywhere. And so I thought, let's remove the personal training aspect and see if I just can do the advice thing. And I started releasing content. So that was in 2013. And I had a spiritual awakening in January of 2013, if you want to call it that. And basically, I started sharing on Facebook videos of what I was learning as I started studying things like the law of attraction and various other personal development subjects, right? And I just started recording videos, and this was back in the same time as you, this time window in 2013, where they didn't have Facebook Live, they didn't have Instagram. You had to record them and then upload them,
That's it.
and it's the scariest time for me, especially looking back, because the only people that followed me on Facebook were my friends, family, like people from high school. It wasn't strangers. And oddly enough, I have hundreds of thousands of followers now, but that feels less intimidating
Yes.
than when it's just your friends and family that are going to see it. And so, yeah, so my first piece of content ever in the kind of coaching space was in 2013. And it wasn't until 2018, so 5 years of doing that, that I had the poem blow up and my social media blow up. Up until then, my social media account was I probably had like 4,000 Instagram followers, I think, at the time that it happened.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's such a cool story. I remember the feeling the same way. I had this, it was called a Sony Bloggy. It was something that was just come out, and so I went and bought it. And the first video that I shot was it was kind of like in portrait and not landscape. And so
Yeah.
everything was cut off at the sides. So back then it just nothing would kind of morph or do anything like that. And it had this automatic zoom. So I was sitting there and I was kind of like talking with my hands, and this thing would just go like zoom in and out and correct itself. And it was the shittest video that I ever did. But anyway, but the same thing, putting it up onto YouTube and uploading it and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, fuck, what is everyone going to think of me? And yeah, that whole build up in my mind was for nothing, because everyone just kind of said, look, well done. I think you're doing a great job. Hold the camera the other way next time, make it landscape. What's with the automatic zoom? And that would just like make fun of a few things. So yeah.
It's so funny because this is the same thing with entrepreneurship or any musicians or whatever. Like, so few people will ever know how bad it was to begin with, or how many mistakes were made, or how many businesses failed, or how many different ideas didn't work out before something really worked. I think that there's a huge celebration of the things that work, and not enough just actually paying attention to. There was a whole journey here that happened to get to this point. And even with my poem going viral, that was in 2018. But what people don't know is I had toured spoken word poetry internationally, including Australia, with very little social media following, losing money to do it just because I wanted to share this spoken word poetry show that I had. And I loved performing, and spoken word poetry was new to me. And it felt like such a cool avenue to explore as a way of helping people transform and elevate consciousness. And so I was doing that on my own dime, at least a year and a half before that poem ever went viral. And so I think it's important to remind people that there is going to be a journey. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of failure, and something will work. If you keep moving, something will happen that other people will celebrate you for. And you have to learn to be okay with all of the times that it didn't work, that people will maybe never know about, or take the time like you to go back and research.
So true. It's a metaphor for life, Adam.
Yeah, and you can find it in everything. I don't know if you're a surfer out there in Australia, but when I was very much surfing all the time, I told people who wanted to learn how to surf, you have to actually just enjoy sitting on a surfboard out in the middle of the ocean. Like, that's the vast majority of what you're going to be doing, is just sitting there on your board, not catching waves. And if you don't enjoy that part of it, you're going to hate surfing.
Yeah, for sure.
And so similarly, the process of entrepreneurship is going to be trying things. They will not work over and over again. It'll feel like you're one failure after another until something works. And so if you don't enjoy the process of things not working, you're going to have a hard time.
So true. Hey, Adam, when you mentioned before you had your first spiritual awakening in 2013, what's your definition of a spiritual awakening?
Well, that term gets overused, I think, a lot. However, I don't know a better way to describe the feeling of awakening, because you don't know you're asleep until you wake up. right? When the dream is so real and so vivid, you're in it. And the only time you know, wow, that I was dreaming is once you've woken up. And so my experience was through ayahuasca. I had 2 ayahuasca ceremonies on a Friday night and a Saturday night back to back. And I remember driving home on Sunday and just looking around the street that I had driven hundreds of times, thousands of times before, and looking at it going, how have I never seen it before? And looking at people walking down the street and feeling so connected to them and appreciating their beauty. I just, in a way that I'd never seen before, there was a appreciation, there was a lens that had been revealed to me. And I think that's so important, because when we talk about the concept of heaven and hell, for example, to me, it's very much a metaphor for our experience here. And it's just the lens that we see. I talk a lot about art, for example, and the artist, and artists are the ones who can see the layer of beauty that's there, and most others just can't see it. When an artist is looking out at a nature scene, they're going to be seeing this juxtaposition of shadow and light and the amount of different greens and yellows, and they have a appreciation for these elements that are there that everyone else can see if they teach themselves how. Similar to a musician who might hear a hammering on a building and get inspired with a beat, and they just hear the rhythm of life, where others just hear noise. And I think that that's how my spiritual awakening was. It was as if there was suddenly a new lens, and there was a new way of seeing all of life, and it was remarkable.
Mm. But there must have been a catalyst to doing ayahuasca. You don't jump into something like that without first, like, at least having a need or a desire to peel back the layers and see what's on the other side, right?
Yeah, 2012 was the worst year of my life up until that point. It was a really challenging year.
Yeah.
And it just, everything that I thought I knew about life and how it worked and the identity that I'd built, all of it was crumbling around me. And so literally out of pure desperation, I reached out to a friend and said, I need some kind of aura cleansing or some shit. I don't know. Just, I need something. There's something, I'm desperate, basically. Just help me out. And I didn't have any spiritual beliefs, really. I was more of an atheist. And he led me to a spiritual intuitive, basically a psychic. And I said, okay, whatever. And then through her, in that conversation, she said a lot of stuff about my ancestors and spirits and guides and all of this stuff. And I remember none of it. I have no idea what she said about anything, except for in the middle of speaking, she stopped and she said, I don't know why, but they're telling me you need to get into a Native American drum circle or sweat lodge as soon as possible. And then she went back to saying all her other stuff. And it was just such a weird, it was that moment where that particular frequency of information landed in my body differently. And I remembered it. And when I got off the phone, that was the one thing that stuck with me. And I said, okay, how the hell do I get into a Native American drum circle? How do you do that? And that weekend I wound up sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony, and it completely transformed my life.
Yeah, wow. Do you want to talk about what was happening in 2012?
Well, so at the time I was living in Los Angeles. I had been pursuing an acting career since 2007, when I first moved out there. And so just to kind of summarize, I had, for my physical health, kind of run into some issues because I had a car that ran a stop sign and T-boned me, and I needed hip surgery, and I had a concussion and was getting migraines. And so my physical health was just shot. And my career, at that point was difficult because I had gotten three consecutive months. Each month I booked a very large part, very large multi-episode roles on different shows. And then all three of them were taken like the week before shooting would start. The director would say, oh, the director wants to replace you with someone he's worked with before, or some reason whatsoever. And it happened 3 months in a row. And then I had a really shady acting manager who had told me, if we're not making money together, no big deal, we'll just void the contract. And then when it came time to void the contract, he made me print out my bank account statement and write him a check for every dollar I had in order to get out of the contract. And I had consulted legal, and so my physical health, my career, my financial zero that I was, after 5 years of struggling as an actor in Los Angeles, I was literally at zero. And I just felt like I didn't know what the hell was happening. I just felt like I was drowning. And I had been such a high performer, such a successful, quote unquote, successful young kid, you know, scholarships to college, varsity sports, winning all these awards and things, that I had thought I knew how to achieve what I wanted to achieve in life. And to have tried for 5 years harder than I'd tried at anything else. I mean, I went all in on like conservatory style acting coaches and trainings and showcases and professional theater and all of that. I'd put so much into it that the idea that I could be 5 years in and feel like was at a complete zero was so humbling that I was desperate. And I think that the more stubborn and the more hard-headed and the more people have an ego about, oh, I know how all this works, the more violently and dramatically the universe has to bitch slap you. And so I think that it's been great because I've worked with a lot of very successful people now over the years from a coaching perspective, because I attract those clients. I attract clients who have made millions and millions of dollars and think that they have it all figured out, and come to me when they're in that moment of going, there's something else and I can't see it. I don't know what it is. There's something missing. And those are some tough nuts to crack, because they think they know, just like I did. And I had to be humbled pretty significantly through a lot of challenges. And then in that humbling, they say where the cracks are where the light gets in, right? And so it was the cracking of my armor and my ego that allowed me to say, maybe I don't know. And only in that space, that tiny space of maybe I don't know, did I open up the possibility for being a humble student. And I continue even to this day to walk the line of being that humble student and saying, I have no freaking idea, and owning the lessons and the growth that I have had of what I do feel I've learned along the way. So that's always a balance for me. But I think that overall perspective of showing up and being willing to release anything that you think you know is an important practice for me. And it's why medicine work has maintained its place in my life.
Wow, that's fascinating. I speak to a bunch of people these days. I think the medicine thing for me is coming up a lot. It scares the absolute shit out of me, because I think for me personally, it's the not wanting to let go of control is the moments that I start to get really hung up on, which is why I kind of want to do it the most, is just to let go of all of that. I had an experience once with DMT, which was quite elating in terms of, yeah, it throws you into, you know, from 0 to level 1000 within about 30 seconds, you know, so you kind of like get shot into stardom. I've done a little bit around mushrooms and things like that, but I've never really haven't done an ayahuasca ceremony. And I certainly haven't done anything like you were saying in terms of something that's maybe like shamanic or led by someone who in a group sort of environment. So I think that'd be super cool. But the thing that I wanted to ask you though is because I hear and I speak to a lot of people that are doing it, and my observation with you is that you seem to be the type of person who I would say, like from what you just told me, the medicine cracked you open and showed you a part of yourself that you were trying to avoid, or it exposed certain things, and then you had to go out and go, well, how am I going to apply this in life? And you seem to be the type of person who's integrated the lessons reasonably well, you would say. So I mean, like, there's always you always fall off the perch here and there, and you make mistakes, and everyone fucks up from time to time, but there seems to be a common thread between some of the people that I see that are advocating plant medicine, but they're doing these ceremonies all the time. And I personally, from an outside looking in, I can't see the integration. So there's a strong part of me that's like, look, I can do the courses and I can keep looking at this expert and that coach and getting all the information, but the action is where it's at. The application of the things that is where it's at. The doing is where it is. Like, what are you fucking doing, Adrian? So like, that's kind of the thing that goes through my mind, is apply these tools, apply these principles, apply this philosophy, apply this new technology, apply this new information that you've learned, just put it in application and push through with it, and then test and measure and iterate and change and see what is becoming of all of the things that you are applying and integrating into your life. And so for me, that's been the most profound growth in the times that I can say that I've experienced it. That's been the most profound thing, is when I've said, righty, I'm just going to apply everything that I've learned. What would you say would be the reason or the difference between someone like you who seems to be tackling the integration part quite well, as opposed to someone who's done 10 fucking ayahuasca ceremonies but is still no better off in terms, or still no further forward in terms of their learning and progression?
Well, I think it's a different skill set. I think it's actually just a different skill set. I think that medicine work and just spirituality in general can be a trap for people who are looking to escape reality. So there's a lot of people who, for example, I'm just going to use this as one example, and it's very stereotypical, but you have the stereotypical Bali hippie who has moved to Bali and become a coach or a yoga instructor or whatever it is. And they are saying that they don't want material possessions, and the greed and materialism of the 3D world is not in alignment with the utopia that is the 5D reality we all want to manifest, and all of that stuff. But underneath that, what's actually going on for a lot of them is that they have no idea how to create the life they actually want. They have no idea how to actionably create a business that helps support the financial goals that they have. And they feel like the system is unfair and not, they don't know how to play the game. And so in that, they find a way of avoiding doing the work to move through that and become a master creator of their own reality. And instead, they take on the, amazing amount of jewelry and malas around their wrists and their necks, and they put on the medicine hats and the things, and they burn enough sage so they can they smell like it 24/7. And what happens is they can play the part, and they can have the persona of someone who has consciously chosen to leave behind the materialism and et cetera. But then notice that they're trying to, I get these messages, by the way, they're trying to grow their social media following. They're trying to sell more of their courses. They're trying to, like, they're still doing it, but then they can pretend like they're not. And I use that very loosely. There's a lot of amazing people. I love Bali, and I have a lot of friends that are coaches that live in Bali. And so I'm not saying that except to basically point out that the integration is a separate skill. And all of the work that you do in medicine is not necessarily going to teach you the skill of integration. And so it's important for people to understand that the process is one of our growth and our evolution, and creating the life that we want is one of awareness, integration, and then embodiment. And that process, at each stage, it's important for you to look at which one do I need help with? Which one am I strong in? Which one am I not strong in? Where can I call in support? For a lot of us, the awareness piece is really important. And that's why we go to medicine ceremonies, is to help bring awareness to areas of our life that we may not be looking at, or not remember, or not even know are important to see, and give us new pattern recognition. And then through that awareness, now we go into integration. But the integration is actually a reverse engineering of the awareness and the goal. So you might say, wow, I'd like to call in a more loving romantic partnership in my life. Great. So now I go to sit in the medicine ceremony with the intention of becoming a match to that. And all of a sudden I see some sexual abuse trauma come up in that ceremony. Well, great. The medicine is now showing me that that is preventing me from having the intimate relationships that I want, because I haven't healed that trauma. Well, now I need to go into the integration of saying, I desire an intimate relationship, and I have this thing that's the pathway, the obstacle that I will need to transcend to go through in order to get what I want. And so I'm going to have to figure out a game plan of how to approach that and take action on it in order to integrate. And as I integrate, I can start to create the habits that will lead to embodiment. That process is not understood by a lot of people, and it's a different skill set. And it's the reason why I don't even market this, by the way, but it's the reason why, for example, last year I led a 10-month mastermind that had 2 medicine retreats, is because I want to help high-level people who are ready to take that next step. I want them to be able to do medicine in a safe way, but also have support in figuring out how to integrate those lessons and turn them into action steps. And I think more and more people are turning to the medicine, and more we're seeing a huge need for the integration piece, because there's also a lot of people who are great with the integration, and that's more traditional business coaching. So in a more traditional business coaching mindset, they can help you with the integration. You tell them their goals, they'll give you the action steps, and you go and do it. But they may not be helping with the awareness of what is energetically or emotionally underneath and in the way. And they may not have the experience with medicine to help bridge that gap. And so I walk the line as someone who's just done it. I appreciate the reflection you've given of how you see me in that. And it is something that I plan on doing more of. I think I'm going to be launching a new mastermind in June that will involve medicine as well.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot of talk to this sort of new age space, and I loved how you were talking about the Bali coach and things like that. I think that's definitely something that I see from an outside perspective. But I also, you definitely pressed on a couple of bruises for me in terms of not wanting to buy into the material side of things. Like for me, my message going into 17, 18, 19 was experiences, not things. And so it was more of a removal of the desire for material possessions and things like that, but going towards the experiences of great things. So with that being said, though, in the last couple of years, with all the shit that's gone on with COVID, I've experienced great financial loss. And I got to tell you, it's certainly aroused like a lot of wounds, a lot of almost like PTSD in terms of, the amount of trauma that has come up. And so for me, it's been everything in terms of not just financially, but spiritually, emotionally, relationships, like everything is kind of, crumbled. So your 2011, 2012 experience of everything falling apart was, for me, the last couple of years. It's the whole 20 years of accumulation of things that have just disappeared, and it would seem, overnight, in terms of all of those things. So I think there's a lot of what you said certainly hit home in terms of people not really figuring out how to, and you mentioned play the game. And so I wanted to maybe explore that a little bit, because I feel there is a disparity between this, people like these buzzwords now, like the matrix, the program, or, the thing, the life that we're in. So we've got this dichotomy between, the people that have got a lot of stuff, and then the people that don't have anything. And the separation now between people losing a lot of money and living on the poverty line, to people that are just gaining tremendous amounts of wealth. So that kind of timeline at the moment is being really, really stretched. You would have people, I'm sure you would experience people coming up to you saying, I just don't know where I fucking fit in anymore, Adam. I don't know how I'm supposed to be navigating myself towards a successful life when the veil's been lifted, and I feel like there's, like, a lot of my life has been a lie. I've been deceived. I've been hoodwinked into thinking that this is the thing that I want, but really I'm striving towards something that's just a fruitless end. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100%. And I want to just express gratitude that you're sharing where you're at and what you've been through. Thank you for that. And I feel for you. I mean, that kind of crumbling of everything that was is a freaking hard process, man. It's very, very difficult. And especially when we've had success, like the the fall feels a lot more, you know what I mean? It feels greater. And so I can relate to that, and just my heart goes out to you in that. And I think that what we're seeing now, what COVID did, whether it's practically with actual material things that have been impacted, or just on an emotional, energetic level, is it completely disrupted the status quo. And so now, as all of these restrictions from COVID and things are starting to get lifted, and people are like, offices are asking their workers to come back into the office, and all of these things are happening, people are going, wait a second, do I want to be where I was? There's a moment of pause to actually stop and go, is my life in alignment with what I want, how I want to be spending my time, and what I'm doing, and how I'm living? And so I think that is that moment of awareness that I was just talking about. That's the initial stage of going, wow, it's important for me to be honest. Radical self-honesty is one of the most important traits that any individual can have if they want to shift their life, because most people are unwilling to admit they're unhappy in their marriage. Most people are unhappy to admit that they hate their job. Most people are not even necessarily willing to admit that they want a lot more financial wealth. Like there's a lot of things that people are not being honest about within themselves. And if you're not being honest, you've already created a separation between you and the reality of you and the person you need to be to get where you want to go ultimately. And so that awareness piece, that honesty piece, is so important. And I think that when we talk about the game, and we talk about the program, the algorithm, I use those terms a lot as well. And here's the reason why. I'll give you maybe a way you've never heard it explained before. Hopefully that lands for you and your listeners here. Right now, you and I are recording on Zoom. I am looking at a computer screen, right? Now, I can interface with this computer screen because I see the image of you. I can see your mouth moving. I have sound that's coming out of my speakers. All of that's happening, and I know how to interface with that. I know how to use my trackpad here and click little things. Underneath, so that's all true. Underneath that is zeros and ones. binary code. That is what is ultimately creating even what we're seeing. That code is also true. Neither one is more or less true than the other one. And so when I'm clicking on things, I'm impacting the code, and the code and how it's running and its parameters and everything is impacting what I can even do and how I can interface with it to begin with. That is life. That is the reality we are in right now. Literally, I look out this window, I see trees, I see wind, I look around my room, I see hats hanging on the ceiling, whatever. Like, all of this is the imagery. And underneath that is a code. There's an algorithmic code, and you can go as deep as you want. You can go into the chemistry of it. You can go into the quantum physics of it. You can go into the very simple fact that, like, what I have tattooed on my arm, sacred geometry, which when we talk about Bali hippies, it's tattooed on all of us, is, and notice I say us, but you have a series of circles that create things like the flower of life. And then you have lines that connect the centers of those circles and create things like the plutonic solids, where you have cubes and you have pyramids and get really complex. And you got dodecahedrons and icosahedrons and all of these things that create the building blocks that create everything around me, the wall, my body. So there's a code underneath our reality as well. And just like if you don't know how to code binary, you won't be able to create a program like Zoom, and you won't really be able to alter the parameters of it. Similarly, if you don't understand the energetic algorithm of how life works, how manifestation works, then you're not actually able to code your reality. You're not actually able to get down underneath it and change the way that your reality shapes up. And I think that for me, what I've always prided myself on, and what I take my clients through, for example, is starting to become coders, starting to understand the process by which this all happens, so that you are now in control. You can decide how you want to proceed in the life you want to create, because it's totally fine for you to say, I don't want material things. I really want experiences. That's totally fine. It's another thing to say that, but not have the ability to choose that. Like, using my Bali example, you can say, oh, I don't want any material things, because you don't actually know how to create it and make it. But there's a different thing when you understand the energy of it all, and you say, you know what, I'm just not going to create that for myself. I want to create this other thing instead. That's a very big difference.
Yeah, so true. And also, I mean, when you want experiences and not things, experiences still cost money. So, I mean, you're still going to have to need to produce or to create cash flow, and it's in order to have those experiences. So I totally get that. And I think it's easier to retreat. It's easier to fall back. And I think part of my experience is that there's almost like a ceiling, or like a bottom. You know, there's only so far you can retreat. It's like in business. There's only so much of the fat that I can trim off before there's just nothing left to, this business is running so lean that I can't take costs from anywhere else anymore. And eventually I'm going to have to change my mindset into saving money to producing income and assets and cash flow and things like that. So it's a different mindset shift. I totally get it.
Yeah. Look, yeah, it's totally a mindset shift. And ultimately it's going to be one, like, I'm in that shift right now. I'm, for the first time in 7 years, because I'm now in the mindset of creating, like, wanting to buy a home and start a family in the next couple of years. Now my mindset's gone, okay, it's time to make money. I haven't thought that in 7 years. I can actually remember the last time I consciously said it's time to make money. I've made great money in my life, but there's the amount of money I've been making is wonderful. And if I want to step into that next level, I'm going to require an up level. And so that process for me is that awareness saying, okay, I want more money now. And now let's go into that and look at that. And it brings up resistance too. I've had resistance into thinking, is it greedy to now set my sights on time to make more money? I've had resistance to the part of me that almost feels like I haven't seen a lot of people hold money in really, like, I've seen a lot of unhealthy behaviors from very wealthy people throughout my life. And so it's like, when I step into that next level of wealth, like, do I run the risk of being that? So there's a lot that comes up whenever we say it's time to do this thing, but that's just the process of evolution. That's a process of growth. That's going to, even if I just said, I want to learn how to play the piano, there's going to be things that come up. Right. And so the bigger the goal, the bigger the shift, the more energy that it's going to require to do something, the bigger the resistance, the bigger the learnings, the more growth is going to be required to be a match to that.
Yeah. I like how you put that. Adam, there's a lot that's coming out from me for me in terms of the things that you're saying and how you're articulating things. There's a lot of your journey would be a deeper self-reflection of why you do the things that you do. And I want to speak to that because I feel that the common theme that I'm bumping into now in my coaching is the relationship to self. And so people are finding that in their relationships in particular, there's a mismatch. There's something going wrong. There's something, and like you mentioned before, they finally had the courage to admit and to at least be aware that I'm not doing the best that I can in this relationship. This partner that I have, that I've chosen, is for whatever reason, it's not meeting my needs, it's not meeting my values. I can't bridge the gap between where I want to be with them. And so that is creating, I guess, a lot of inner turmoil in terms of where these people are at. And I don't know if it's just me, but the common thread is somewhere between the age of 35 and 50 is kind of this window of people realizing that perhaps I'm climbing the ladder of success, to lose, like Stephen Covey's words, only to realize that it's leaning against the wrong wall. And so in a relationship sense, from my perspective, I'm like, well, we need to figure out how you operate and how you tick. And the relationship with yourself is going to be a reflection of your relationship with others. And so I want to talk to that because I know your latest course is around breakups. I wouldn't mind if you could share with me what you went through in terms of your breakup and the catalyst to creating this course, because I feel like 2020, with the start of this bullshit pandemic and everything that was going on, I feel like the relationship with self, that was kind of like, for me, it was almost like a universal wave that come through where people that did become aware of what was going on realized that I needed to change this perception of what's going on in this meat suit in order to navigate myself. And so their relationship with themselves started to become almost like the main thing that they should be focused on in order to create whatever outgrowth, like a relationship or a business or a new path in life, or whether I'm choosing a new career. It all comes down to their relationship with self. So can we talk? I know
I mean, there's a number of things in there. I think to your point, whatever your goal is in life, whatever it is that you are aspiring towards, the fundamental thing that's in the way will have a tether to self-love. Every time. I have not found an exception to that. Which tells me that this entire game that we're playing in some way, shape, or form, the entire purpose of it is learning how to love more. The capacity to love others is limited only by our capacity to love ourselves. When we hate our own judgment, then when we see others who are judgmental, it triggers the hell out of us. When we have not found compassion for our own failures in whatever ways, then we are going to be much harder on our kids and our coworkers and or whatever, because we're so unforgiving of ourselves. Like we're with ourselves 24/7, 365. And so the internal dialogues and our relationship with ourselves is the lens through which we now view the rest of the world. And so it always comes back in some way, shape, or form to our relationship with ourselves. That may seem obvious to a lot of people, but I'm telling you, in that one statement, in that one piece, if you want to get into the game of the energetics and coding your life, there's so much there for you to go into and start to unpack in your life. And then in regards to relationships, romantic relationships, they are going to be the greatest opportunities that we have for growth, because they are going to be the mirrors that let us see the deepest parts of ourselves. That's the reason why, is because there are aspects of me as Adam Roa that only my romantic partner will ever really know. My best friends won't know that parts. You are literally and metaphorically naked with those partners. And so the reflections that we get and the things that we see and what comes up for us is at just a deeper level and cannot be seen in any other dynamic. And so the growth opportunity is huge. And also, when there's a breakup, the pain and the suffering and the absolute fracturing of our identity is massive because of how deeply those have penetrated. And so I went through 3 significant breakups. One of them was after 10 years of being with someone. And after that 10-year relationship, I made a reality show called The Art of Choosing Love, which was basically cameras following me around the world, showing what it looked like to try and heal after a breakup of 10 years. And after the second and the third breakup, after the third one, I handled that by taking every journal I'd kept since 2007. So there's like 15 big journals. I took them all to a cabin in the woods where I didn't see other human beings most days. And I just started reading them from chronologically. And I started taking notes, and I started to notice that when it came to these breakups, there were a lot of patterns that I hadn't corrected. Like I hadn't shifted from one relationship to the next. So I saw those patterns. I also saw the exercises and the like journaling prompts that I was doing and the books that I was reading during all 3 of them. And I just started consolidating it all. And I realized you can actually move through the breakup process more quickly and with less suffering. You actually can. And I did it after that 3rd breakup, but you have to understand the process. You see, people think that once you break up, that now you're single, but they leave out. That's not how I view it. You go through it, you're in a relationship, then you break up and you enter into a breakup process. And you are in that process until you actually get to the point where you have shifted, you've gained the lessons, you've left behind the baggage, and you've shifted into the new version of you that's now aligned with the next level of relationship that you are going to call in. Otherwise, you're just going to call in the same lessons. So you're not actually elevating to that next level. So you're still stuck in the breakup process. And the next relationship you call in is actually just a part of the same breakup process, which is intended to help you learn the lessons. And so I think for me, I wanted nothing to do with breakups. Once I got through it and I'm like, oh my God, I finally got through it. I didn't want anything to do with it, but it felt, then I had several friends, high level coaches, some of which like that you might know or follow, called me when they were going through breakups and said, can you help me? And then said, why haven't you made a course about this? When I dropped some knowledge on them. And I just realized it was time to kind of come full circle and make my course, which is called The Art of Breaking Up, and is on my website, adamroa.com. If anyone's going through a breakup, my heart goes out to you. And trust me, this is a 10-week course where I've put the best of the best of what I know works, both from an understanding of what the process is and also practical tools and exercises to heal your mind, body, heart, and soul. And that to me was a way of completing my breakup process, really, was by turning what I'd learned into something valuable for other people who might need it. Because the breakup process is absolutely like derailed my life. And I don't think it needs to do that for most people.
Yeah, wow. Can you tell me, without obviously going through the entire course, there must have been, like, before you break up, there's a moment, right? So there's that kind of realization that perhaps this is not where I need to be. And I suppose that's on both sides. So it could catch you left hand, like, as an out of thing, out of sight thing. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it catches you off guard. So you're the one that's getting dumped, or you're the dumpee, right? So, or the dumper. So there's a moment in between, like, leading up to that point, and then there's the moment of making that decision, and then dealing with the process of all the gamut of emotions as to why it happened, and going through all of that, all that anger and turmoil and emotional upheaval, I guess. So have you broken it down into like a stage, or is there a realization of a process in terms of before it's time to making the decision to, this is what I'm dealing with at the moment? Because there's a kind of, in my experience, there's a lot to talking about the separation between what my vision or my view of that particular relationship was, and then where I am now. And so there's this kind of division between old Adrian and the new version. And at times you don't know which new version you want to express into the world, but you know that old version is not it. Is this making sense so far?
Yeah. The breakups are perhaps only breakups and death create this opportunity that we have where your past, present, and future all dissolve simultaneously. Literally, the moment that you go through a breakup, your entire past, like literally your whole relationship, takes on a different lens because it was all leading to a breakup. Before that, it was a lens of the future you were going to create and the potential and what you had. But the moment that you break up, suddenly all the things they said have different meaning, right? All of your activities and what you went through had different meaning, and your present, and then also your future, because you saw a future with them and now you don't know. And so death does that, but very few things dissolve your past, present, and future simultaneously. If you get into a car accident, your present and your future have shifted, but you don't suddenly go and think about the meaning that your junior high school girlfriend had on that. It just doesn't affect it in that way. And so that's why it's such a powerfully disruptive event. And it's also why there's a greater opportunity in a breakup than at almost any other point in life, because you're now a blank canvas, because the meaning that you now assign to your past, present, and future is up for your creation. And where most people get hung up is that they don't lean into that process intentionally. And so they just go through it, and the meaning that they assign to the past and the relationship is going to be based off of just rationalizations and protection mechanisms to make themselves feel better so that they can move on. And their present is oftentimes an avoidance of discomfort, right? There's a lot of maybe they use sex or alcohol or eating, or maybe they start dating people they know aren't good for them or whatever. That's the present can get affected. And so all of that to say that what I've found is that there are basically 5 do's, 5 don'ts that are very big. I'll give you an example those are the 10 weeks. But for example, don't blame them, I believe, is week 4, something like that. And then don't blame yourself is week 3, I believe, something, it's 4 or 5. And so the interesting thing about that is don't blame yourself. A lot of people might have a harder time doing that than don't blame them. For some people, it's the reverse, and they take on more of a victim and they blame the other person for why it failed. And in the opportunity, the moment you stop blaming yourself, right, you can actually start to identify the ways in which the relationship was not actually aligned. When the moment that you stop blaming them, you might actually be able to start identifying the ways that in which you didn't show up in your highest. And these are examples of the types of things that are important to learn so that you don't repeat the same patterns. And so the course, that the Art of Breaking Up course, is really helping you understand that, and then giving you actual exercises to do, practicality, so that you can integrate that. And again, we're coming back to the integration. I can say everything I'm saying now and help you understand why it's important not to blame them because of, not taking on the victim mentality, because it's important for you to blah, 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 blah. And the integration piece is where you're actually going to shift. What's the action you're taking on that? And so when we're talking specifically about the course, I believe that you need to grow in these areas in your mind, your body, your heart, and your soul. It's a holistic growth. And most people don't take a holistic approach to the breakup process either. They just don't want to feel so shitty. That's really what it comes down to. Anything that I can do to move on and not feel in so much pain, that's what I want. And very few say, okay, what are the steps for me to move through, which means I'm going to have to go into some of this. And so, yeah, I learned a lot through my breakups. I've put it all into this course to the best of my ability. And hopefully it's, I've seen it help a lot of people. I get the messages and stuff, but hopefully it's something that continues to get into the hands of those who really need it.
Mm. Yeah, well, I'll definitely link it up in here so everyone can go and check it out. A couple of the posts that you were putting up during, I would say, the creation, or if I could put a timeline on it, I noticed that, and you said earlier in this interview that your goal now is to get a house, start a family, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to ask you, for like man to man, in terms of your experience going forward. You're an enlightened guy, you're self-aware. How old are you at the moment, Adam, if you don't mind me asking?
38.
38, right? So you're sort of at an age where perhaps your experiences out there in terms of trying to find that woman that you want to settle down with and raise a family, then do you find, because you're in that bracket of people that may have been in a similar situation to you, maybe they've been married before, maybe they've had kids, maybe their paradigm of relationship or marriage is different to yours. And I wanted to ask you how you found navigating through all of that. And the reason why I ask is because we touched briefly on the intimacy side of things. You've said, like, you're literally and figuratively like naked and you're exposed, and so to bear all in that sense is something that requires a lot of vulnerability and also a lot of self-awareness. So in saying that, I think when you get to those levels, that was what you were saying to before, like you get to that point where you want to avoid pain, but the trouble is that when you get through those self-growth moments together, that pushing through that pain barrier is the kind of loophole to getting towards that closer intimacy, that closer intense, like higher vibration. That level of intimacy, I don't think is achievable without pushing through those painful points. And so how is it being for you navigating through that process? Because you can't really go surface level on all this stuff if you want to find someone who's a mirror to what you're trying to project out there, right? So But in order to do that, you're going to have to go fairly deep. You can't just say we're going to avoid the intimacy side of things because my view of marriage is that I don't want anyone who's slept around with many partners, and I want to start a family, and all of these sorts of things. So how have you found that navigation between what society would seem as this is the right thing to do in marriage, and here's the moral things that we should be considerate, and then also your spiritual side, which is I need connectivity and juice and joy and passion, and I need vibrancy, and I need all of those sorts of things. How have you found that?
I mean, I guess the part of it is I don't give a shit what anyone else says. I don't really care when I was in my 10-year relationship, we were never married. And for the first 3-4 years, every time my family was around, my aunts and uncles, when are you getting married? When are you going to get married? And at year 5 or 6, they stopped. Because I didn't even know at the time if I wanted to get married, or if she didn't really necessarily want to get married either. Our focus was elsewhere. And so I think that whether that's open relationships, polyamory, traditional monogamy, I don't think that what other people want or what society says or anything has very much impact on me personally at this stage. I know that it can for a lot, especially when you have like familial pressures from religion and different things. So I'm not saying that it's better to not give a shit. I'm just saying for me personally, I stopped caring a long time ago. It's kind of part of the thick skin of putting yourself out as a public figure. You just got to learn not to give a shit what people say. And I think that to your other point though, I don't know if you want a relationship that is going to be your growth path, like if you want a partner that's there to grow with you and help you grow, then what you're saying is you also want a partner who's going to bring up all of your shit that you can't see or haven't wanted to look at. That's how it works. If you want a partner, and I know, by the way, I know a lot of guys specifically who've settled down with women who don't question them, who don't challenge what they have to say, who don't argue. And these men like it that way. They can kind of do whatever they want. And that's the type of relationship dynamic that they have. But I found that in those dynamics, in my observation, those women are not who they're going for to also grow. The relationship isn't that for them. And so it depends on what you want. I desire to spend my life with someone who's going to be the greatest teammate for our growth individually and collectively as a family. That's what I want. And because I desire that, I have to be willing to be there when she doesn't agree and is very, very much willing to let me know that, or when she calls out my behavior. And it's important for me, where I have struggled in the past and my work is I study relationships. I deep dive all the time into personal development and conflict resolution and my own medicine work and all of this, right? So in the past, it's been hard for me to remember, hey, she may see stuff that you can't see, and to really humble myself to be a student of hers in relationship. And that's my work. That's 100% my work. And we all have different work, whatever yours is in relationship, the things that you are going to have to consciously catch and be like, oh, I do this. I do that thing where when she says it to me, I'm immediately saying I know better. I have to catch that and say, okay, let me pretend that she's right. Let me see if I can find the ways that she's right in this situation as different lens on the conversation. And you start to develop, again, actionable steps to help overcome and integrate the old way of being into a new way of being. And so I don't know if I answered your question. I guess my point is that you're going to have to design the behaviors in relationship based on the type of relationship you ultimately want.
Mm. No, I think you answered it quite well. There's a lot to the things that you want to achieve. And like I said, I think when you sign up for that person in your life that you really want to grow with, I think that you're 100% on the money, that that particular person, if you want to call that person into your life, is going to challenge you on the things that you've been either oblivious to, or they're just going to call you out. They're not going to be that sort of subservient kind of pushover that doesn't really say anything to not ruffle your feathers, and you can just go and do whatever you want. But you're never really going to have any true personal growth in that respect together. And so I think we're on the same page in terms of seeking someone out that is looking to grow together. I guess in the same breath that we're picking each other apart, but then we're also putting each other back together in a safe, harmonious way, I guess, that we can all kind of stand on our own 2 feet and keep moving forward. Adam, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your enlightening conversation. This has been a kind of whirlwind of different topics and bits and pieces. It's great to get to know you. I'm going to link up all your connections in terms of websites and socials and things like that. So any final words before we wrap up?
No, man, just thank you for having me on. Thank you to everyone who's gone on the wild whirlwind conversation with us. And yeah, I encourage anyone to come and connect with me online, or, I have a lot of online real estate in terms of I have a free text message community and newsletter that goes out every week, and an online community called the Create Community. But if you're a fan of podcasts, I have 2 of them, the Deep Dive with Adam Roa, and then also You're Too Much with Adam and Taylor. So yeah, come and find me, connect with me. And thank you, Adrian, for having me on, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. All right, mate, we'll wrap it up. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much again. Have a great day.